Recently, I had an opportunity to view the new Disney movie Aladdin. I shall save my praises first. This movie was fantastically done. It was 90% faithful to the 1992 movie and altered very little, something that is a rare phenomenon these days. The movie maintained itself as a musical and performed the numbers verbatim. Will Smith did not try to reenact Robin Williams, which was a very wise move. Instead, Smith acted as his usual self while incorporating key plot devices and lines from the original. Even while he was repeating lines directly from Robin Williams, it did not come across as an attempted impersonations. The visuals of the movies often recreated shots from the original. Even camera angles were recreated, and the scenery was beautiful. One thing I was very impressed with was how they took the characters that were very one-sided in the original and made them into well-rounded characters. They went more in-depth with them than expected. In the beginning, when Jasmine steals the apple, gives it to some starving children, and is caught by the merchant, one would note that the scene of the guard catching Jasmine and threatening to cut off her hand for stealing was completely removed. This was an element that Muslims protested greatly when the original movie was released, claiming it was demonizing their culture by depicting them as barbarians. Yet you can go to any extreme content website and find countless videos of thieves in the Middle East getting their hands crushed by stones or cut off, as this is the recommended punishment for theft in the Quran. As Aladdin jumps in to save Jasmine, he and the merchant have a dialogue that humanizes the merchant beyond just a random no-name character shouting, "Stop, thief." He is a character that anyone can relate to, a modest business owner dealing with a clever shoplifter. In fact, something I picked up on was that there were no vapid characters at all, except one, and thus begins my criticism. As all parents would, and should, expect all children's movies to contain anti-white propaganda, this movie was no exception. It is mind-boggling how many hoops they had to jump through in order to bash white people. At first, they hid the face of Jafar, and I watched with anticipation that he was going to be white, as they always have to reserve the roles of villains for white men, even when the role is not, and my heart swooned to see that he too was an Arabic man. Finally, I thought. Finally, a movie that was not going to bash white people, because how else could they at this point? But this was short-lived, as a few scenes later, they managed to accomplish it. In a plot-relevant scene in the original movie, a prince named Ahmed comes to meet the Sultan to discuss marrying the princess. The two men talk about her like a piece of property. The princess becomes offended, and in full feminist style, rejects the prince and lambasts her father for treating her in such a way. In reality, this is the way women are treated in Arabic society today. To even think women had an expectation to be treated as anything more than property in the Middle Ages is purely laughable. And like the hand amputation element, this fact was also removed to cover up the brutalities of Arabic culture. In this movie, Prince Ahmed is replaced with Prince Anders, a pure white prince with blonde hair and blue eyes. They go so far out of their way to show he is European, they even give him a Germanic accent that is so horribly performed, it is flat out insulting.
What? Don't tell it. The cat with stripes.
He likes you here.
I know. But in Scotland, cats love me. Puss.
He is annoying, narcissistic, effeminate, and borderline queer. He is so stupid, he does not even know what a cat is. I will call it what it is, racist. It was a racist depiction of Europeans, and they went out of their way to do it, because there should have never been a single white person in this movie. You heard me right. Look me in the eye when I say this. There should have never been any white people in this movie. Does that surprise you? An advocate for white rights stating that whites should have not have been in something, when white supremacists are supposed to be all about taking everything over, then maybe you have just learned something about the people you call white supremacists and what we really believe. This is a story that takes place in Arabia during the Middle Ages, when Arabs had just began invading Europe. and at least 2 centuries before the Crusades began. If there were to be any white people in this movie, then they should have been depicted as slaves. Does that also surprise you? Yes, Arabs were enslaving Europeans by the millions during this time period. The idea of a European prince riding into Arabia, the land of people who have been attacking and enslaving his for centuries, to marry an Arabic princess is ludicrous. In private conversations I have had about this movie, some have suggested that Disney just wanted to show Jasmine was so sought after that princes from far away were coming to court her. But I respond to this by suggesting that they had more viable and realistic options. A prince from India, Africa, Persia, or even Asia were all on the table, and all of them in direct landmass. No, this was deliberate. Nothing depicted in movies is by accident. Every detail is carefully planned. They completely replaced a character. A writer wrote his lines and role. The director evaluated the script and no doubt sent it back for rewrites. The script was scrutinized, required studio approval. Producers had a say. The actor had to review and memorize the lines. This character went through massive checks and balances before being filmed. This is exactly what they wanted. Compare Prince Anders, a limp-wristed dolt, with other men throughout the movie. All the men, from the highest roles to nameless palace guards and merchants, were all well-spoken, masculine men. Even Jafar's character was given a shot of testosterone, as his original depiction in 1992 was slightly effeminate to show a man who was not willing to get his own hands dirty, a high-class scoundrel. But even in this movie, Jafar is humanized and depicted as a masculine man that grew up in the streets of the kingdom and worked his way into the palace. This was deliberate, to show white men as weak, impotent buffoons that are the product of endless white privilege. It was an unnecessary change, and it was done with malicious intent. If you believe I am exaggerating, while I was gathering clips to use in this review, I discovered a deleted scene where Prince Anders gifts the Sultan with a massive cannon that Anders childly refers to as a very big gun. This opens an entire dialogue where the princess labels Anders as a warmonger, and the entire royal court, including Jafar, lectures Anders that they are peaceful people who do not believe in war.
Dolly is good at this game. What could it be? Yes, what could it be?
We'll get it.
Is it a giraffe?
No, it's not. No.
Is it a male cow?
Oh, you're so close.
Is it a female cow?
You're so close.
Is it a gaggle of geese?
No gaggles.
So it's not a gaggle?
You naughty girls, you lied. You're not good at this game. Surprise!
It's a cannon. It's a cannon.
In Scotland, everything we make is sleek and minimal.
Oh, it's very impressive.
Yeah.
But we are a humble people, Prince Anders. Not impressed with the gift so much as the sentiment behind it.
Sentiments for the...
Your desire for war?
No! It's just a very big gun.
Our princess fails to understand that no man desires war, but a ruler must prepare for it nonetheless.
Yeah, whatever that means.
The princess also wonders if in preparing for this war, you induce the very conflict you seek to avoid.
No, my dear.
The princess has read something about statecraft.
Yes, we will target that boat over there with the crosshairs. Drum roll, please. Okay, prepare yourselves. It's very loud. Whoa! I hit! Yeah!
Tell me, Prince Anders, which boat were you trying to hit?
That one over there.
So not the one with the target element. Isn't the one sinking your boat?
depict Jafar as holding a higher moral compass than the gun-loving, warmongering, narcissistic, blonde-haired, blue-eyed Nazi that is so stupid he sinks his own boat. This scene was no doubt cut not because someone felt it was too over the top and played too hard at demonizing the white man, nor that it was a complete alien scene that was not even fathomable in the original, but because it affected the flow of the story. Witnessing this scene is infuriating, and I'm glad it was cut. The entire Anders character should have been cut altogether, and the movie would have still played out perfectly. I will now end this review with a positive statement, Will Smith aside, as he is up for much debate. I believe every actor in this movie was a perfect choice for their roles. Mina Masood looked as if Aladdin had stepped out of the cartoon into real life, while Naomi Scott is half European. Her Indian side shows enough for her to not look out of place. In fact, she passes for Arabic more than her co-star, Nassim Pedrad, who is full-blooded Iranian. While Naomi does not look like her cartoon counterpart, it is her acting that sells the role, for she nails the personality Jasmine expressed in the original. If I were to excuse the Prince Anders character, I would give this movie 2 horns up. Ponder these words as you follow me on all social networks in the description. And remember, watch from the shadows and see the truth.